Well, welcome everyone. I am Felicia Leammukda, and I don't know if the other presenters want to introduce themselves. Go ahead.
I'm Julie Bianchini.
And I think Mercy's here. Mercy, would you like to introduce yourself? Well, and then we also have Mercy. Mercy, you're muted.
Yeah, I'm Mercy Ogunshola Bandele. I'm right here.
Sanlyn, Buxner, and Trish Patrick were not, I believe, aren't able to join us today, but they also helped prepare this. So let's start out. So today we are going to learn about how to write a NARST proposal. And here's our agenda. We just went through introductions. We're going to review the proposal guidelines in the rubric. And then strategies for writing a proposal, common weaknesses, and proposal examples. And then if you have any questions.
Yeah.
So first we'll talk about—
Felicia, somebody asked if we could say a little bit about our background in academia.
Oh, sure. I'm sorry.
Yes.
Okay, yeah. So I'm Felicia Leammukda. I'm at St. Cloud State University. I just finished my third year. This would be my, I guess, 7th year at NARST, because I've been there since my first year of grad school. I still feel like fairly new in academia world. I'm in the biology department, but I teach STEM ed and science ed.
So again, I'm Julie Bianchini. I'm at the University of California at Santa Barbara, and I've been a professor of science education for a very long time now, about over 25 years. I have been a member of NARST all that time. I've been on the NARST board, and this is my second time being a strand coordinator. So that's me. Oh, I'm in the Department of Education, and my focus is on science teacher education. Mercy, do you want to say a little bit more about yourself?
Okay. Pardon? Okay. I'm with the National Open University in Nigeria. I'm the director of the Quality Assurance Directorate. I'm also—
Oh, we lost you, Mercy. Mercy?
Also a professor of science education. I joined that was several years ago, and so yes, please. Can you hear me? Can you hear me?
Yes, now we can. Yes.
Hello, can you hear?
Yes. Oh, we lost you again.
Hear me now? Hello?
Yes, you're just coming in and out.
You can't hear me. Oh, yes. Okay. Now, I said I'm Mercy Ogunshola Bandele. I'm with the National Open University in Nigeria. I joined NARST 91-92 session when I was doing my sabbatical in the United States. I'm a professor of science education, and I'm right now the international coordinator. Thank you very much. I'm still battling to turn on my video. I don't know what's wrong with the computer. I'm sorry about that.
Okay, so so we'll go back to the review of proposal guidelines and rubric. So there are 5 different formats. We are going to focus more on the first 2, just more talking about a paper. the 15 to 20 minute individual presentations. And then within each session, there's 4 papers and the 90-minute sessions. So you get about 15 to 20 minutes per paper. There's also interactive poster papers, presentations, symposiums, and roundtables. And we'll talk more about the program formats in a little bit. So in terms of author and presentation limitations, you can only be first author on 1 standalone paper or within a related paper set, 1 interactive poster paper, and 1 roundtable. You can be a presenter only in 1 symposium, but as far as being a second author, it's unlimited. So earlier submissions will be deleted if you are the first author of more than 1. So if you do more than 1, then they're just going to keep the latest one. And you can't submit your NARST proposal to another conference. So the submission process, you go to this website here, and I will find a way to post this PowerPoint presentation. I'll share it so that it can be posted as well as this recording. And then you log in if you're a member. If you're not a member, you can create an account for free and create a password. And then if you want, your email could be in the NARST program. It'll be used for official NARST correspondence. So as far as abstracts and proposals, so under the home page, you'll find, and under user tasks, you'll find many links. There's a call for proposals, which is where this information came from. And it's a PDF. There's a PDF of the pre-conference workshop call for proposals. There's a link where you submit your proposal. There's a link to view and edit your proposal that you've already submitted after the deadline, so you can still edit it. There's a user account volunteer, so a place where you can volunteer to review proposals and also preside, which is very highly encouraged. And then there's a link to view current strands and strand coordinators. So I'm new to the strand coordinator thing this year on the side. And there's the different program formats that I briefly talked about before, and then a reviewer rating sheet. So this is a criteria that you used by the reviewers in the peer review process. So under the user task, the first thing that you're going to do is you're going to choose to add a new paper, and you're going to choose which format. So is it going to be a standalone paper or a related paper set, because you can only do 1 as first author? Is it an interactive poster or roundtable or symposium? And then press continue after you've chosen a format. And then again, you can only do 1 type per format, or the system will delete and overwrite your previous posts. For the standalone paper, you'll first write a title, and there's a 15-word limit. And then you will be able to choose research paper or theoretical paper. And you are also going to be asked if you're willing to present as an interactive poster paper or roundtable instead, because we do get a lot of proposals, and sometimes there's not enough room to have all of them be poster, not poster, but standalone paper presentations. Then you add your authors. You can have up to 10 authors, and it's a good idea to use the lookup names button. So these are people that are in the system that are in NARST members. That way the author names are exactly the same throughout the proposal. This is really important. Then you will write a 200-word limit abstract, or 1,200 characters. Then you will upload the rest of your proposal will be on one PDF. That includes its 5-page maximum, and that does not include your references. That's so excluding references. You have a separate page for references. So all the in-text citations should be included in the reference list and 7th edition APA formatting. Then you'll choose your strand, and then you're going to select 2 content keywords and 1 methodological keyword, and then you submit. Are there any questions so far? All right, so oh, go ahead.
No, I just said there's no, I don't have a question yet.
Oh, okay. And then as far as the review process goes, all proposals are masked and peer reviewed. So you need to make sure that you de-identify your proposal. So remove all the names of institutions, even the cities. So for example, if you were talking about, you know, if I was talking about St. Cloud State, I would talk about a university in the Midwest. Remove self-citations of all authors, and then you would just instead write authors, comma, and then the year of publication. Also, just remember that your PDF contains metadata that may identify you as the author. So what you do to get rid of that is you open the PDF, go to File, Properties, delete any de-identifying information, such as your name or institution, in that metadata, and then save the PDF before you upload it. Proposals that do not meet these criteria will not be reviewed. So this is really important. In terms of formatting, just as a repeat, 5-page maximum, excluding references, 7th edition APA formatting with a reference list of all in-text citations, single-spaced, 1-inch margins or 2.54 centimeters all around, so that's top, bottom, left, and right. Font can be no smaller than 12 on US letter size paper, 8.5 inches by 11 inches. And make sure you convert to US letter size before converting to PDF. All right. So Mercy's going to talk more about this, but there are 5 criteria that reviewers will look at. I'll just briefly go over them. Subject problem, your design and procedure, your findings and analysis, your contribution to teaching and learning of science, and how the paper will contribute to interests of NARST members. So you're going to write about all of this in your proposal. The 5-page limit is only for the proposal, but not for the paper presented at the conference. There's a reviewer rubric and checklist that we'll go over. I think Mercy's going to go over it in more detail. And then you'll get a confirmation of submission, an email. So you'll receive an email of confirmation on the web screen, and then each author will receive a confirmation either email, and only the proposal submitter can track the proposal on the abstract submission homepage. There'll be a confirmation number that you should keep for your records. And make sure you note the deadline, date, and time. So most proposals are submitted in the last 72 hours, so just be patient. And it's usually at 5 o'clock your local time. So it depends on your local time. So more author requirements. All first authors must be present at the conference and present. They must register by the close of advanced registration, or the proposal may be removed. And you will not be contacted if you don't register in time. So make sure you do that. All presenters and all conference attendees are required to register for the conference. And if you present a paper, roundtable, or poster, you are required to have an APA 7th edition formatted paper for distribution at the conference. And a digital link is fine. And then this is just a shout out. In order for us to have a successful conference together, we really need volunteers. So please consider volunteering to be a peer proposal reviewer and also a presider at the conference. And so this is the NARST rubric, and you can find this right in the call for proposals PDF. And I believe Mercy's going to talk more in detail about this, so I'm just going to really breeze through this. So there's a Likert scale here, and this is kind of the rubric here. So highly evident to not evident at all. So the proposal provides a clear, substantive, and coherent evidence of all criteria, all the way down to does not describe any criteria in the category. So, and then a reviewer cannot just write yes or no. They need to explain why, with evidence, you know, why they chose 5, 4, 3, 2, or 1. And then we talked about this. So I suggest after you write your proposal, you kind of go through these questions you're on your own, because this is what the reviewers will do. Is there a clear focus for the study, for example? In design and procedure, does the proposal clearly describe the methodology? And so on and so forth. I'm breezing through this because I know that Mercy has a lot to say about it. And then don't forget the contribution to NARST. And there should be a cohesiveness to related paper sets. And is this going to be of interest to NARST members? And did you choose the correct strand? And then you have an overall rating. So you'll get really good, hopefully you'll get really good feedback. I know I have in the past. And then there's a checklist. Make sure you have pseudonyms, you de-identify everything. So go through this checklist. Make sure you have the authors. So all the authors are consistently written in the exact same way throughout. And then I talked about the formatting. So you're going through all that and the converting to the PDF. All right, so that's my part. Are there any questions before we go on to strategies? And if you think of something later, we'll have questions at the end. All right, so I will turn this over to Julie.
So I'm just briefly going to discuss strategies for writing a good proposal, and we'll then talk more about weaknesses of existing proposals, so then the additional ways to strengthen your proposal. Do you want to switch to the next slide, please?
Yep, I'm trying to. Oh, there. Sorry.
So these are just some strategies we brainstormed that could be helpful when you're going about writing your proposal. One would be to create a table as you're outlining your proposal, where you have the proposal guidelines from NARST in one column, and then you start outlining your proposal in the middle column, and then having the proposal rubric that Felicia just shared with you in a third column, to make sure that you're addressing all the different aspects required to be reviewed by NARST. Another suggestion is to ask a colleague who's already had an accepted proposal at NARST for a copy of that accepted proposal, and then kind of modeling your proposal after that. Asking a colleague who has gone to NARST or had a proposal accepted at NARST to read a draft of your proposal. Asking a colleague to score your draft using the actual NARST rubric. And then another important thing is to select an appropriate strand for your proposal. So, next slide, please. Oh, so there are 14 NARST strands. And when you submit your proposal, as Felicia mentioned when she was talking about the requirements, you need to select the proposal that you want you need to select the strand that you want your proposal to be reviewed by. At the NARST review system works through the strands. So your proposal will be reviewed by members of the particular strand that you select, and will be processed by the strand coordinators. So it's important to pick the correct strand. As I mentioned, we have 15 strands. One of the strands no longer exists, strand 9, but so that number is just skipped rather than they decided not to renumber the strands at this time. I'm a strand coordinator for in-service science teacher education. And sometimes your proposal can fit into more than one strand. It might, for example, intersect with in-service science teacher education and issues of culture, social, and gender. So you want to try and pick the strand that you think would be most appropriate. Sometimes looking at your citations can kind of help you decide which emphasis, which aspect of your paper best fits with a particular strand. The strands are run by strand coordinators, and strand coordinators follow similar procedures for reviewing proposals. Typically, the number of sessions allocated to a particular strand is determined by how many proposals that strand receives. But there are some differences in terms of acceptance rates across the strands, depending on how many people in a particular strand only want to do a paper proposal, and how many are willing to move from a paper to a round table or a poster. We have more spots available. We have more flexibility with round tables and posters than we do with papers. So I'm not sure what happened with Felicia. Are there any questions about the strands or strategies for writing a proposal before we move to Mercy?
I'm sorry, I have a question. So you talked about the availability in each of the different strands for acceptance. Are those statistics someplace to know which strands are the have the most slots typically available?
So the slots are available depending on how many proposals are submitted that particular year. So if you submit to a strand that has a lot of proposals that were submitted to it, then there will be more sessions available to that strand. So does that make sense? So it doesn't, so if you submit to a less popular, a strand that receives fewer proposals, that strand will have fewer paper slots. So it's proportional to the number of proposals.
Okay, yes, thank you.
But again, there is a little bit of difference between the strands, and it depends on who the strand coordinators are, and in terms of how many people are willing to submit or present as a poster or round table instead of a paper. Any other questions? Okay, so I think we could move on to Mercy's discussion.
Okay. Can I have the slides, please? Yeah, I'm going to talk about the common weaknesses observed in NARST proposals. The next slide. We found out that there are large differences in the amount of writing and information per section. That's to say that you find out, for instance, in subject and problem, you have a lot of information being written there. And when you get to design or result, you just have scanty information there. We should, no, please, can I have the former slide, please? The former one, the first one. The first slide, please. Felicia, the first slide, please. All right, for instance, in subject and problem, the expected information for that, okay. No, it's still at the back, the very first one, okay. Each section is usually given a guide for the assessors to use. Yes, this is the first, thank you, Felicia. Each section is usually given a guide for the assessors to use in scoring. And this guide should decide the amount of information that is expected. So for instance, under the subject and problem, the expected information expected is that, is there a clear focus for the study? The proposal should have a clear focus. Does the proposal include a clear rationale? The study must be clear enough and convincing enough on the need to have that study. And does it describe In this case, if it's a model you want to describe, the assessor will be looking for any of it, mix of it. The next slide, please. The next slide, please.
Yes.
Felicia,
Yep, I did go to the next slide. Do you not see? Not knowing what is important to me.
I want the next one now. Okay, now knowing what is important to be included, realizing that in most cases, we usually cut and paste. We already have the full paper and we want to cut and paste what is important for each section. But we have to realize that we should cut and paste the important thing that we are guided by what is written and what should be scored. It is usually, no, I've not gotten there. Now, let's remember that reading an introduction to a book is just like, it tells you either to continue reading or to give it a break. So the subject and the problem are usually included in this introduction. And we have to make sure that your subject, your problem must be interesting, because that's the first thing that the reader is going to read and be impressed about. Oh, let me go ahead and read more about this study. So it's important to be interesting in simple language, and it should be clearly stated. Next, please. Next, please, Felicia. Then under the design and procedure, thank you. I'll be saying next so that it helps me to continue. The proposal should be clearly described. It should describe the research method, procedure, and design, and should be appropriate for the study. It's noted that in most cases, they are not clear enough. Also, in some cases, where you expect a qualitative method, a quantitative is used. Where you expect that they mix the method, they use just one of the methods. Next, please. Next slide, please.
Yep. Analysis and findings.
Next slide. Okay. Under the analysis and the findings, there are 3 items for scoring. Namely, does the data analysis appear to be appropriate, coherent, and for the study? Are the argument or interpretation supported by the data? And does the proposal discuss alternative interpretation, bias, and so on? The problem we usually have here is that some of the studies don't even have data. Either they are ongoing or they are theoretical. So it becomes so difficult to score this session, because the first scoring item there is, do the data analysis appear to be appropriate? So when there's no data, there's nothing to score. Are the argument or interpretation supported by the data? When there's no data, there's nothing we can see that is supporting. So the need here is to focus on the results. Can I have the next, please?
Contributions. There's a little delay, I think.
Please,
Contributions.
Okay, all right. Okay, see some findings. Your results should be your contributions. There are also 3 items on contributions. Do the conclusions add, refine, refute the theoretical construct? Do the conclusions contribute valuable insight and has implication for teaching and learning or researching in science education? And does the proposal clearly address the implication for equity issues? Next slide, please. Next slide, please. It's slow. Okay. Now, by the time one is concluding, the assessors want to see the proposal, if it has actually added, has it refined, or it has refuted the initial theoretical construct. Has it added, has it refuted? One of the implications it has for science teaching, research, and equity. The latter is so important because it has to be written. Because for science teachers, what is the implication for it? For our researchers, what is the implication of this study to the researchers? And that the proposal writers don't usually take note of the implication, can I say that, on equity issues. A lot of times, equity issues are left out, and it's very important because this is part of the vision of NARST. Next, please.
General interest?
General interest, yes, please. Items to be addressed also is the content, the presentation of the content. Does it promise to be of interest to the general, does it to be of general interest to NARST community? Is the content presented in a way that will be meaningful to NARST members? And does the paper promise to be of interest to education community at large? These are the three items to be assessed under general interest. So when we are writing, we look at it. What I'm writing, what do I paste under the content that it will be it will be a general interest to NARST community? What should I paste under that section that will show that it is meaningful to NARST members? And then what should I paste under that section that will show the interest to the education community at large? Next, please. Okay. Looking at the first is the interest of NARST members, the goals of NARST in achieving science literacy, and the goals for the year should be addressed. The second item is based on the way it is presented. Quite a number of proposals get rejected because they have not been well put together and they are not well stated. And some also get rejected because of language barrier. For that one, at times, there are times you read and you can't even put meaning to what the person is trying to express. So there is need, the next slide, there is need, as Julia has said, to always have a second eye to help look at whatever you have written. If, for instance, you are from the developing world, from my side, there is need to get somebody who is better in English to help read through and dot the I's and cross the T's before submitting the proposal. The last item on the larger audience is usually skipped also. The community of what interest is it to the NARST community? People will normally address the interest to NARST members, but to NARST community it is skipped. NARST is part of a larger science community, and the interest of the community should be of paramount importance. Again, the instruction restricts to 5 pages, and I'm happy Felicia has stressed that we should keep strictly to those 5 pages, because by the time I'm reading a proposal, and by the time I get to the 5th page, I stop. So don't think the more you write, the more, no. When it says 5 pages, we should try to stick to the 5 pages. Thank you all for your time. Hello.
So before we talk about examples, are there any questions about what Mercy presented? Okay, so I will briefly talk about 2 examples and then we'll open the floor for questions. So these are proposals that graduate students and I wrote several years ago. And there will be, when Felicia posts the PowerPoint, you'll be able to link to these 2 proposals. So first is a weaker proposal, that one that was rejected. And some of the major issues with the proposal were that it was too short. As Mercy said, you don't want to go over 5 pages for your proposal. Remember, the 5 pages don't include the references, but you don't want to go over the 5 pages. But if you have an extra, pretty much an extra page blank that you could have used to provide more information, reviewers will probably note that in some way. And in this case, they noted that that there was too little data presented in the results. We could have used that extra page to add to our data presentation, particularly since it was a qualitative study. We could have added more qualitative data to our results section. And then we didn't make adequate connections, particularly to explain why our paper would be of interest to NARST members or to the larger community. So in our significance section, it was rather vague. And so those are reasons why this proposal was rejected. We link not only in the PowerPoint to the actual proposal, but to the reviews of this proposal. This proposal was reviewed by 3 different reviewers. Sometimes you'll see that individual reviewers will have different opinions about the proposal. One reviewer might really like the proposal, and the other 2 have concerns about the proposal. And then it's kind of up to the strand coordinators to read through the reviews and make a decision if there are differences between the proposals. Sometimes if only 2 reviewers review a proposal, the strand coordinator will ask someone else to review the proposal, or will review the proposals carefully themselves. But in this case, I think if you look at the reviews, all 3 reviewers felt that the presentation of the results and the method section and the significance section were too short, didn't provide enough information for the proposal to be accepted. Felicia, do you want to move to the next slide, please? So what my graduate students and I did is we took the feedback from the reviewers and resubmitted the proposal again the following year. And this time the proposal was accepted. So if you look at the 2 proposals, they're very similar in terms of the title and the introduction and the conceptual framework. But the rest of the paper or the proposal is somewhat different. So what we did the second time around is we strengthened our discussion of methods. We added additional information about our participants and our data analysis. We added more information in our results section. We presented not only figures this time, but because it was a qualitative study, we included thick description of a few cases. And then we also made clearer connections in our discussion and significance pieces about how our research connected to teacher education and to issues of equity, as well as to the NARST community and to the larger science education community. So if you look again at the proposal, you will see that this one, is 5 pages long. There is some formatting issues moving it from a Word doc to a Google Doc, so it might look a little bit longer, but it was at the 5-page maximum, not including references. And then if you read the reviews of this proposal, they were pretty consistent. This proposal was only reviewed by 2 reviewers, but the reviews were pretty consistent in what they said. I should note that, this isn't, I put it as a stronger proposal. I wouldn't consider it a perfect proposal. If you look carefully at the rubric and you look carefully at the proposal itself, there are ways it could have been strengthened further. So I wouldn't say that this is a perfect proposal and should be modeled after it. It does still have some weaknesses, but I think because the methods were clearer, the results were there. We provided more results that the reviewers felt that it was worthy of being presented at NARST. So the floor is open to questions.
Questions can be about anything from this presentation. Do the links work, or do I need to put those in?
The links should work if you wanted to.
Cool. Okay, so I just tried the link. All right.
Yeah, so you can see another thing also, I guess, to note is that the reviews of different strands look differently. So, so if you submit to one strand 1 year and another strand the second year. The formatting of the reviews might look a little bit different by strand, but all strands follow the same scoring rubric and follow the same practices in terms of having each proposal reviewed by 2 or 3 reviewers. So do you want to, Felicia, you could link to the reviews of the proposal just to show them what the...
Oh, sure. So this links to reviews of this proposal.
So if you scroll down, you can kind of show them what. So that's the abstract of the paper. If you scroll further, you could see the, so the final decision was accepted. And then, as I mentioned, there were only 2 reviewers. So there was no review 1. So this is kind of, you get a score on the rubric. In this case, it was a 5. And then there's some text about, why they scored it by using those particular numbers. And sometimes even if you get a 5, they still, there are still suggestions about ways to strengthen the proposal or things to include in the final paper. As Felicia mentioned, some of the, all proposals are 5 pages, but when you go to the conference, you're expected to include a finished paper, and the paper can be much longer. And so oftentimes, if a proposal is accepted, reviewers will talk about things that they would like to see in the final paper.
Oh, and there's a 3rd review.
Yeah, so this one only had 2 reviews. It didn't have a review number 1, but it had review number 2 and review number 3. So, I mean, people can look at them offline. I don't know, Felicia and Mercy, if you had anything else that you thought would be important to mention in the webinar.
So it's pretty self-explanatory. A lot of this information can be found on the NARST website, including in the call for proposals. So yeah, and I will send this to be posted. I'm not the one who posts, but I'm sure somebody, Jill, our president, will post it, or somebody. So does anyone else have any questions? Or
is there any way that you could post those links in the chat section so we could actually look at those before? I don't know how long of a process it is to get something uploaded to the website.
Sure. Let's see. So there's this one.
Well, I think if you just shared the PowerPoint, Felicia, then.
Oh yeah, you could just.
Oh yeah, that's a good idea. Okay, here, I'll put the PowerPoint in the chat. How about that? I'll put the link in the chat right now. I can figure out how to do that. Share. Sorry, my computer is acting.
I think that should work. Can somebody, I put in the link. Can somebody? Felicia,
yes, you put in the link?
Yeah. Does that work?
Yes.
Okay.
Okay, great. Thank you. My computer's slow right now.
Thank you very much. This was very, very helpful. I really appreciate it.
You're welcome. Anyone have anything else before we sign off? I guess it's a little bit, we still have a few more minutes, but it's fine to end early too.
I have one question. I know that you mentioned that there's a strict 5-page limit. What if you have a lot of graphs and charts? Does that also is that included within the 5-page limit?
Yes. It is.
Yeah.
Okay.
So that's actually one of the things that if you look at the rejected proposal versus the accepted proposal, granted in the rejected proposal, we had almost a page that we didn't use, but there is a way of making the, including figures and text in the 5 pages. So you want to think judiciously about what's most helpful for reviewers, and sometimes having too many figures and not enough actual text it depends if it's a quantitative or qualitative study. So something to think about.
Definitely. Thank you so much.
Also, Julie, I think they could also indicate that they have this table, but it will be in the full paper. The moment it's indicated, you just describe it and tell us that table will be included in the real paper. Otherwise, it's going to consume the pages. Thank you.
Yeah, so sometimes, you obviously you can't fit, as Mercy was saying, you can't fit everything into the proposal that will be in the full paper. So just making that explicit is also helpful. Saying I have additional data related to this research question, or I have additional tables and figures that will be included in the full paper, just to let reviewers know, that this is a subset of the data that you're going to be presenting in the full paper can be helpful.
And then you said you can also edit that, go back in and edit that at any time, also your proposal?
After the deadline, you can edit, yeah.
Okay.
Although you do run the risk of it already being reviewed, I would think.
Yes.
All right, well, I think that, Felicia, we can. And
I'm sorry, I have one more question I just thought of. You also mentioned that you won't find out if it's accepted until whatever date. And is that like February, or when is that usually? Approximately.
It's usually in November.
Okay.
Around Thanksgiving, if I can remember.
You submit your proposal in August, and then you typically hear in November. And then the registration for the conference typically opens up in late December, early January sometime. Depending on exactly when NARST is held, because sometimes it's in March, sometimes it's in April, then there's a early registration deadline, depending on whether it's in March or whether it's in April.
So the proposals are due in August. Is that what you said?
Yes.
Okay.
Felicia, you muted yourself.
Sorry. I believe it's around mid-August, but I don't think the call hasn't gone out yet. So I think I'd like to say July, beginning of July.
Yeah, the call for proposals will be out beginning of July, and typically it's August 15th as the proposal deadline. And then you hear in November, and then you register for the conference in January, February. And then the conference is March or April. And on the NARST website, it tells you when the conferences for the next few years will be held and where they're located.
Perfect. Thank you.
All right. Any other questions? Well, thank you, everybody, for attending. And we will post this, and we'll also, I know we shared it, but we'll post the slides as well. Have a wonderful day. Thanks for coming.
Yeah, thanks for coming. Have a good day,
Yeah.
everyone.
Thank
Thank
you.
you. Bye.